Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here. And you are very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button, and please do follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Man. And welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Multiverse Daily, where we'll be discussing the future of Batwoman and Jim Lee and how very vitally important it is that he's running the whole of DC Entertainment, the comics, the TV shows, the movies, everything, and they're giving him more and more responsibility. And I want to talk about how vitally important he is and how he's everything we thought Jeff Johns was going to be. Right, let's talk about Batwoman. Now, I very randomly decided to talk about Batwoman and its future and think if the show can be saved. Just looking at the cast here and thinking about someone like Rachel Skarsten as Alice and Beth Kane, right? This was a brilliant performance. The only good thing out the whole of the first series of Batwoman. What went wrong with Batwoman? And it did go wrong. Ratings were low. Reviews were kind of all right, but I think even the critics kind of saw through how weak and terrible this show was. And you kind of feel sorry for Rachel because what she did with Alice was so good. It would be like having Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor in Smallville, but everyone else was crap. But everybody else wasn't crap in Smallville. They were as good as him, which made it such a classic, red letter day for the history of live action Superman, if you like. But this isn't the case. Of course, this is the first live action Batwoman kind of attempt. And you look at it, first of all, you look at the casting of Ruby Rose. Ruby Rose is someone who should be in John Wick, someone who doesn't do very much, someone who maybe can beat a lot of people up and things like that. But in terms of acting, Ruby Rose was such the wrong decision to lead a TV show or to lead a movie. You would know, no one with any intelligence would do this, but because she was in John Wick, because she's gay, because she's part of the LGBTQ community, right, they decided to cast her, right? So again, their premises of casting and the reason for doing this show in the first place are flawed. First thing, Batwoman wasn't greenlit to be a great, awesome Batwoman TV show. It's about making political statements constantly, right? And anything that's part of the entertainment industry, the only premise is to make political statements and represent and include, but not be entertaining and not create something special. In fact, it mutes your political message, where if you actually do something special and you've got this member of the LGBTQ community starring in the show and she does a good job and it's well written, and then you've got something extremely special. So she's a weak actor. She can't lead this show. So instead, they've got Rachel Skarsten pretty much running the game because she's the only one that's got a strong screen presence who can actually, I'm not saying that none of them can act, I'm saying they're not as strong as Rachel. I don't know if Rachel's back for the second series because the whole situation is odd. They rightly sacked Ruby Rose, but Ruby Rose, they should never have wasted Ruby's time. Ruby had a terrible accident within the show as well, which laid her off for a while, I think. But listen, once you cast the face of a TV show, it's then very, very difficult to say, nah, we're gonna cast someone else. So they've cast Javicia Leslie, is it? Who I think is gay. She's black, of course. So they've doubled down on the political statements. Not that there's anything wrong with casting a black Batwoman. There's no issue there whatsoever. It's their reasons for doing it. And of course, they're representing people of colour a lot since the incident of the policeman killing the criminal, right? I forgot his name now. But basically, since that disgusting moment in American history, they've decided to represent and include more and more people of colour while they ignore Native Americans and people from other minorities. It's actually pretty bad because people of colour are the most represented minority. Calling them a minority is a joke because they're not even a minority. They're so heavily represented in society while other minorities are not. But because of what's happened to this man, we saw a policeman brutally, slowly kill this man. So now everyone's decided racism is just towards black people. It's black people who are not represented, and everyone else just gets ignored. It's not a good situation right now in the entertainment industry, because people of colour are getting all the work and other minorities are just being ignored. It's really, really bad. Anyway, so we've got Javicia Leslie. Never heard of her. I don't know if she's a good actor. I don't know if she will do a good job. We've already seen her in Ruby's costume. I'm assuming we'll see her in Ruby's costume, then she'll get her own. But she might keep Ruby's costume. Nothing wrong with that. I like Ruby's costume. I like the idea of the wig and all of that. There was never an issue with the costume, was there? But Ruby had to go. Ruby was too weak. It didn't work. You got people like Cameron Johnson as Luke Fox, of course. I think he was quite good, but again, he was a beta male in it. He was basically just made to look like the fool. After all, he is a guy. We've already spoken about Rachel Scarston, who's amazing. And then we've got Megan Tandy, who played Sophie Moore. Yeah, listen, I'm not the kind of person, you know, I'm trained to be an actor myself. I'm not the kind of person who's going to say this person's bad or that person's bad. I'm just very interested in the casting, because basically the casting is done on ethnicity rather than talent. So when you go down, so you've got Nicole Young. I thought Nicole Can. I thought Nicole was actually pretty good and a lot better than the rest of them. In fact, I think she would have made a better Batwoman than Ruby Rose would have. But, of course, I'm not sure if she's gay or a member of the LGBTQ community, so I think that's important to them. Now, Dougray Scott was a piece of brilliant, brilliant casting. And I was really excited that they cast him. And I tell you what, he made any scene with Ruby Rose look a lot less painful than it would have been without Dougray. So I don't know what happens to him. You've got Sam Littlefield. You know, you've really got a big digressive cast. But obviously, Alice was the only redeemable thing from the whole show. And we all know that. Unfortunately for them, Alice is a white American actor, female actor. I suppose that's some kind of representation, but not kind of the boxes they wanted to tick. So they're not proudly going on about her, even though everybody who saw it, man, woman or beast, said that was the standout performance and writing and character of the whole show. I would probably give her her own spin-off, but it's not going to happen. They need her back. I don't understand what they're going to do here. All I can see them doing is saying that Kate's been kidnapped, or she's gone missing, or she's dead. Now, where does she come from? Because she can't be a relation of Bruce Wayne, right? I don't know, unless Thomas Wayne shagged, an African-American woman, I suppose, then it's feasible. Or she could have nothing to do with the Waynes, right? But they have cast this is where it gets really interesting, because we know they have cast a Batwoman version of Batman. Now, this is extremely interesting. This is interesting because this means this is going to be a very, very different TV show now. I think they understand the weaknesses in the show. But the problem is, instead of saying, do you know what, let's make this a compelling TV show, then you don't need Batman. I mean, we all want to see Batman in this. But if they actually sat down and said, right, we've cast an inclusive cast, right, we're ticking all the boxes, right, which is great. So that's cool. How about now we write something compelling? But they don't want to do that. Nobody can argue in one of my best TV shows of all time, Smallville, that it wasn't that representative or inclusive of all different races and different sexualities. It was a different time. Even though the pilot of that show will be 20 years old next year, right? But the point is, mentalities were different back then. We can't arrest all showrunners and creators for not representing enough. So I accept that we look at things differently, even 20 years on with television shows. We want people represented, but I don't just want one minority represented. That's what I'm saying to you. That's where it's wrong. They're only interested in people of colour and people from the LGBTQ community, but everybody else is standing on the subspectrum wondering, this is not fair, this is not equality, this is not representation or inclusion. So the alt-left have really gone balmy with people from the LGBTQ community and people of colour, but they're not interested in anybody else, which I keep on saying. It's just balmy for me. If I was running a TV network or studio, in this day and age, I'd want to represent as many people as possible. But I would think I'd be insulting that quota of people if I didn't give them strong material. Now, Ruby Rose didn't have strong material, and she wasn't directed very well, and she needed a lot of directing, and they failed her. And in the end, she lost her job. She said one day she's going to speak about it. I'm very interested because she said, oh, you know, no issue with the showrunner. They did a great job. I thank everyone for giving me the job. Well, she didn't say there wasn't an issue. She said she was grateful for the opportunity. But just because people give you an opportunity doesn't mean you haven't got an issue with them. Maybe one day she'll come out and discuss it. And so you've got this situation now with Javicia Leslie. You've still got the same showrunner, still got the same writers, but they have, I mean, by the way, and I forgot the lady's name, who one of the showrunners of Batwoman, I'm not sure if she's the sole showrunner, she wrote a lot of Smallville. She was very good at writing Smallville. So she's not an idiot. She's not a muck. She's got it up here. She's part of a big writer's room. Anyone who was involved in Smallville was talented. You wouldn't work on Smallville if you didn't have the imagination and the talent. So I suspect that maybe there was a bit of interference in this one from the CW. I think this show, Batwoman, was very important to the political points that the CW were trying to make. And I think maybe they've understood that they failed. Now, the failure of Batwoman Season 1 is very similar to the failure of Supergirl Season 1. Don't forget, Supergirl was cancelled by one of the biggest networks in America, in the world, CBS. They wanted this to be the big statement show, you know, a female superhero, and it failed. And then Supergirl literally had her tail between her legs, and she went off to the little CW where she had some minuscule success for a few more years, which is great. And I kind of see the same situation, even though it is like a cancellation because they've sacked Ruby Rose. And, you know, Ruby can come out and say that she quit all of a sudden, but I don't believe that. I don't believe anyone quits this situation. I just don't know it in the history of television where someone is going to get a second season, or maybe the CW said, listen, we'll give you the second season, and maybe because CBS and the CW is pretty much a merger between CBS and Warner Brothers, if I remember rightly, right? So both networks would have said, you know what, we'll give you a second season, but not with her in it, which is really, really cruel. I would think that most of the original cast will keep their jobs, but we'll see. This could be a total reboot. Now, that's one way of going at it, and I can't remember what the showrunner has said, if it's a reboot or a continuation. I think it's a continuation. So can they save this? Yes, you can. It's like starting again. They've been given a great opportunity. Batwoman, listen to me. Batwoman is a great character. If you read her in the graphic novels, she really is great, and it doesn't matter whether she's black or part of the LGBTQ community. She's a great character. And if you genuinely, this is the problem with these people working in entertainment today, a lot of them don't have a genuine passion for storytelling. And they're more political than they are, you know, wanting with the gifts of imagination and entertainment. They don't have those gifts and don't care. These are the kind of people coming into the industry, and this is where it's problematic, and this is the problem with Batwoman. So can Batwoman be saved? Yes. If you genuinely want to give the audience something, you know, you've got your representative and inclusive castings, right, and employment structures. So now all you have to do is actually give us something good. And so I'll be looking forward with so much intrigue on how this works out for Batwoman. Do I think they can keep this going for a few more years? I think it's up in the air, but I think, like Supergirl, it came onto the CW, didn't need as much people to watch it or support, and it survived. And you know, they clearly they never wanted Batwoman to go away because that would have proved too many people right with the way they were going at it. This is kind of, we don't care. Our message is out there. That's the situation in the industry right now. But you've also got to entertain people and do right by the characters. And if you're not going to do that, you should get out of this industry. So my prediction is that Season 2 of Batwoman will be stronger. They're really going to go at this. There'll be a kind of dynamic between Bruce Wayne and this character played by this new actor. And I think it will be pretty much as good as the relationship between Tyler Hoechlin and Mel Benoist as well. So I'm hoping for a more improved season, and I think that, yes, they can save Batwoman. Let's hope they do, because she's a great character, by the way. Let's be clear about that. DC, my beloved DC, and my beloved DC fans, we have gone through the mill since 2013's Man of Steel, haven't we, in terms of responses to these movies and how hard it's been, even with the comics. We've been in and out, and I think if we stick to the live action stuff, we've definitely been through the mill. I believe that Jim Lee, let's talk about Jim Lee, because Jim Lee is everything, I think, that we believed Geoff Johns to be. I think Geoff admittedly said after being in charge of DC Entertainment that it was something, it wasn't his strengths to be a leader. And I think we've heard a lot of accusations about Geoff, and it's clear, I think, his passion for DC is so strong, and it being being done in a certain way in terms of live action, whether it's films or TV, that I think it's clear he crossed the line. I think he knows he crossed the line, and he knows he's best served just, writing his own material. He's great. And, Stargirl has ended up really well. And I know Grace Randolph said, oh, he couldn't handle it. And people said, he lost the plot on it. Listen, he worked on it. It's his show. He gets the credit. And unless you can prove that someone else covered for him and rewrote it and anything like that, but you can't. So shut it, Grace. Anyway, we know what Geoff Johns' talents are. I believe that Jim Lee is everything that we need. I'm so happy that he's running everything DC now, and Warner Media and AT&T are giving him more and more responsibility, which I think is so vital. He's like an ambassador. He's everything that Stan Lee was for Marvel. Now, of course, Jim Lee hasn't, he wasn't the founder of DC Comics. We know that. He'd be, in an old people's home right now, right? No, but he's as close as we've got to Stan Lee. He's, as I say, he's an ambassador. When you think of the name Jim Lee, you don't have any negative thoughts. It's, wow, it's Jim, man. It's Jim. Jim, you're awesome. Draw me a picture of Superman. This guy started off as an artist, and now he's found himself pretty much in charge of the whole of DC. It's amazing. Now, I know when he was first given the role, it was like temporary, but I think we now know that this is a permanent position for Jim Lee. He's in charge. He was front and centre of most of the kind of panels at DC Fandom as well. He's the one running this show. Now, in terms of the films, he's running this alongside Walter Hamada, who was promoted after doing a brilliant job at New Line Cinema, and I believe he's done a really good job thus far of steadying the ship. And so Jim's this ambassador, and they've got this great idea from this multiverse strategy. What is the multiverse concept? Well, the multiverse pretty much means that there's multiple versions of Earth, there's multiple versions of Krypton or Ohar or whatever you want. Basically, that's what the multiverse is. So if I'm a Superman fan on this version of the planet Earth, in Cyprus on another version of the planet Earth, I could be wearing a Darth Vader t-shirt. Maybe I'm a serial killer. Who knows? Let's hope not, because all the cleaning up afterwards, terrible, isn't it? Anyway, so that's what the multiverse is. It's different versions of worlds, but people with the same people on them, but different versions of them. And so the reason that Jim Lee and Walter Hamada have embraced this is so everyone gets a piece of the pie. So filmmakers can do anything they want. But as well as that, there is this kind of thread and arc where you can allow crossovers like they are doing in the Flashpoint movie, which I'm really excited about. And I just feel that Jim Lee is the perfect person to be running this ship, because as I say, he is an ambassador. I love the support he's given to Zack Snyder, even doing lots of drawings for him in his DC movies as well, which is great. So Jim Lee is a friend of Zack Snyder's, but it goes beyond that. He believes, and he's said it already publicly, which I think is great, that we must embrace all corners of DC and everybody's a fan. And I think when we heard him say that earlier this year, it was pretty obvious we were going to get the Snyder Cut. but we didn't know at that point. We know now. So now Jim Lee and Walter Hamada have come up with this idea of having this multiverse strategy. And I think what's so exciting about it and potentially great that you've got an announced movie like Flashpoint, which can embrace everything, that can set up what they're trying to do and say. And I think it's probably the biggest moment in DC history. And I think it's so versatile and it's going to embrace so many different corners of fandoms. And I think finally they've nailed it. Now, they still have to execute the films properly because I do think they want to interconnect the different versions of Earth in the multiverse, right, and different planets. And I think they do want to have a connection. And I think what Flashpoint will do, it opens it up. It opens everything up so people can cross over from planet to planet, you know, Earth to Earth, whatever you want to call it, right? And so different versions of each characters can meet. Because we already know that crossovers work. We know that from Arrowverse. We know that from the MCU. We know that structure and that concept is the very reason that the MCU and Arrowverse are so popular. It's the element to create good and strong characters and have them meet. It's a simple thing, it's an easy thing, and it's a cheap thing. And if done properly, it's liquid gold financially. And basically, they found a way to say, do you know what? We started off with the Snyderverse being central to everything, and it's clear that we can't have that. We want the Snyderverse, we want it somewhere, but it can't be central. And I think that's good for everyone. There's maybe not going to be a central Earth. Will there be an Earth 1? I don't know. This is all going to be explained in the Flashpoint movie. So we are going to see different universes. They're going to reset this franchise. We will find out what the main Earth is and what the second Earth is. They can set up the main Earth in the Flashpoint movie. So there's so many things that need to happen in that movie and they're planning. And this is a big project, as I said before, for Andy Muschietti. And that excites me as well because I do believe that Andy and his sister can do this. And then you've got Christina Hodson that's written a script for this. And that's interesting because she hasn't had many successes, has she? And now she's going off with Margot Robbie over to Disney to kind of do some kind of female version of Pirates of the Caribbean. And that, I mean, if you're a Pirates fan, that should concern you. Even with or without Johnny Depp, that's worrying because we know that she wrote Birds of Prey. We know that was a little success. And I don't think Christina's a bad writer. I just don't think she's a prolific writer. And this is why, I mean, personally, I am of the theory that Ben Affleck has rewritten the whole script because there were rumours about that. I know that he read the script and he basically wanted one of the provisos of him coming back as Batman in that film was that he rewrote elements. I believe he's got together, maybe with Chris Terrio, to rewrite the whole of this script. Now, will we ever know that for sure? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to come out and say that, but I think there is going to be a further rewrite. I know they were bigging up Christina Hodson, but no, this is how you know you can't trust someone in the entertainment industry when they put their arms around you, right? It's happened to me, and they tell you that they love you. That's when you know they're about to knife you in the back. So I do believe probably that Affleck and Terrio are rewriting Flashpoint, and I think, as I say, one of the provisos. It is interesting that Affleck hasn't made any public statements, or nor has Keaton, about being in this film. I assume all this will come together at a later date where everyone involved will be talking about this and maybe they'll do some kind of big, big deal, big seminar or something. I think that DC is going really big now, so they want everyone to see everything that they're doing. It's a new world. This is Walter Hamada's Worlds of DC concept. Now, that was the clue back in just before the promotion for Aquaman, when they were going around talking about the Worlds of DC, and then that went quiet because plans were changing all the time. But one thing's for sure, this is Walter Hamada's idea, and Jim Lee has rubber stamped this, so they're both working on it together. So, when Walter came in and they said, what can we do here? We're in a mess. Snyder's gone. Justice League's a mess. What do we do here? And Walter came up with this multiverse strategy, the Worlds of DC. I think it's a genius strategy that can make everyone happy. Separate filmmakers doing whatever they want, and giving the fandom something extremely special. So I talk about this every day because this is our future. If you're a fan of these movies and these universes, and you're a fan of the comics, or you love Zack's version of DC, everyone gets to share in this beautiful universe. And I just hope and pray by that time the name-calling, the toxicity calms down a bit. Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DC Multiverse Daily. See you again soon.